Hey everybody, welcome to another living room edition of Baseball Night in New York. It's brought to you by your Tri-State Cadillac dealers, Doug Williams alongside Anthony Recker and Todd Zeile. We're going to talk about two things today, guys. First, though, on the agenda is really the biggest story across Major League Baseball right now. It was first broken last night by Jeff Passan of ESPN. The Major League Baseball was considering the idea of creating almost a metropolis for all 30 teams in the state of Arizona. They would all play there with no fans as soon as maybe the month of May. The story basically said that top health officials in the United States had okayed this. Major League Baseball later released a statement, which I will read, that kind of pushed back on that. But before we get to that, Todd, what are your thoughts on that idea just in general?
I mean, it's bizarre, even for baseball. That's, I think as a guy that's ambitious right now, and I think I'm a guy that's also starved for sports content and want to see the guys back in the field. Even that one, when I tried to wrap my head around it, seemed a little bit outrageous. And especially, I thought they might lean towards that all these guys would be tested. It would kind of be this metropolis, as you said, sort of play in a bubble, and then they would only interact with themselves. But to add in social distancing as a part of the gameplay seemed to me to make it to a whole new level, and it didn't even really seem realistic at that point.
Anthony?
Yeah, I'm all with Todd here. I love the words he used to describe it. To me, it just seems irresponsible. I mean, I don't really understand how it would all work. To go, and to kind of elaborate on what Todd was talking about, you're talking about social distancing, putting guys in the stands and having them 6 feet apart while they're playing the game instead of being in the dugout. I understand the concept, great, but what about the pitcher who licks his fingers and throws the pitch to me and I catch it and then I'm throwing it back and then it gets hit into the field and the left fielder fields it, and there's a ball involved, and in baseball, whether it's spitting in the box, whether it's spitting seeds or what, I mean, I know you can eliminate that stuff, but these are things that just they happen during the game. It's the course of action. It's just things that happen, and I don't see how you could take all those elements out of the game and have these guys play things that they've been doing since they were 5 years old.
You're asking also Major League Baseball players to potentially relocate their families or be entirely separated from their families for months. And, that's something that Major League Baseball players, as you guys know, are used to, having to say goodbye to their families more often than they would want. But to have to just leave altogether with no, home series to look forward to, that's a lot. So as I mentioned earlier, Major League Baseball did come out with a statement that kind of pushes back on all of this. The key part being, obviously, no decision has been made, but that while they're in touch with everybody, they have not sought out or received approval from federal, state, or local officials or the Players Association. So if this decision is made down the line, it's far down the line. Even though Major League Baseball is talking about May, none of this has been agreed to just yet. All right. So moving forward, let's talk about a guy. Switching gears here, we want to talk about one, I think, of the more fascinating players on the Mets roster, especially to talk about with you two, which is Amed Rosario. Really, you look at the numbers, solid season. Drove in 72 runs last year. This is a guy who's still not getting on base maybe as much as the Mets coaching staff would like him to. In this day and age, that's something that is valued so highly, but it was an improvement last year's season. Anthony, when you view him as a player coming off of 2019, how much growth do you still think there is for him to do?
Tons. I mean, Amed, he's still a young guy. He's still improving. His numbers year to year, even analytically, have gotten better every year. Last year, he had a nice jump in line drive percentage, his hard hit percentage, exit velocity. Everything was going up, and it all looked good. Nice high batting average. You touched on it though. The one thing that this guy can really do to expand his game is have a little bit better plate discipline. Now, he's an aggressive hitter. He's always going to be an aggressive hitter. You don't want to take that away. But there's a point where you want to be aggressive to your pitch and understanding what your strengths are and really going after those so that you don't have to waste certain pitches and certain at-bats going after any pitch and swinging at everything. And that's something that, I think he could definitely learn from.
I had a chance to really cover Amed a lot last season and break him down early in the season, middle of the season, end of the season. and watch his progress. There was a couple of things that really stood out for me. There was a series, I think in May, where he was struggling so bad defensively, it was really in his head. You start seeing it was working with him in the dugout, on the field, before games, after games, and really tried to get his confidence there off on the defensive side. And as that started to shift a little bit, you saw his confidence also grow over his overall game. So at about that same time, he went from the long stride and a little bit of a wild swing to what he called his two-strike approach. He kept that for the entirety of the season. And by spreading out, not striding, and doing more of an Anthony Rendon version of his swing, he did help his plate discipline considerably. And ironically, he hit the ball harder and hit the ball with authority to the opposite field. I think a big part of the game that he could add an element to this Mets offense is with his speed. I think he's got great speed. He's the fastest guy on the Mets roster, but yet he doesn't know how to really take advantage of that yet. So those types of things, I think, can make this guy a really valuable player going forward.
Well, so Todd, you bring up the speed, and that's part of what makes where you put Amed Rosario in the lineup every day so interesting, because we're used to the idea of putting this speed guy at the top of the order. That is kind of an old and an archaic concept by now. But is he someone who you think could earn the 1 or 2 spot in the Mets lineup every day, or is he a bottom of the lineup guy until he learns to get on base like a Brandon Nimmo or Jeff McNeil?
Yeah, I think right now it seems like Nimmo and McNeil are the 1-2 guys in that conversation. I don't even think Amed Rosario is in that conversation right now unless something happens to one of those 2 guys. But if you remember last year when he went to the top of the lineup, I think there was a lot of people that thought he'd get exposed there because of his free swinging sort of nature, but he actually really thrived in the 1 hole. And, taking a step back, the 8 hole is also a place for a young guy to learn plate discipline, because you got the pitcher behind you, and most of the time the pitchers are going to expand the zone, and you get frustrated as a hitter hitting in that spot, especially as a young hitter that wants to prove himself. So I think he's matured a little bit. He's done a lot better job in the 8 hole when he got put back there last season, at still maintaining that same plate discipline.
And 2-part question, Anthony, to you then. When you hit 8th, did you notice a unique difference? Not a jab that you hit 8th a lot in your career. I'm just asking. Did you notice a unique difference in terms of the pitches that you got to hit? And do you think that that's the best place for Amed Rosario?
Well, I'll say, as soon as Todd started talking about the 8 spot, I was going to say, I can speak to this. But, it definitely, in that position, in that 8 spot, you're definitely getting pitched a little bit differently. I mean, you have the pitcher behind you. If you have the ability to drive in runs, if you have the ability to hit a home run, they're certainly not going to come in and just say, oh, here's strike 1, here's strike 2, go ahead, see what you can do. They're going to find your weaknesses and really try to expose them. And if you like to expand the zone, they are going to do that constantly. They're going to expand. Even if you don't, they're going to try to get you to expand. So, I mean, yeah, that's definitely something that, Amed, he's going to have to learn in that position. It makes it harder for him to be in that position, but hopefully he learns a little bit more from that as well.
I like, just from listening to you guys, the idea, and this is kind of outside the box because I know you like having high on base percentages at the top of the order. If you put Brandon Nimmo in the 8 hole, I think he'd have a 500 on base percentage. I think that it might be good for everybody just because he is so selective. And if the pitcher wants to give him a base on balls every time he's up and get to the pitcher, you've got a base runner half the time. I mean, Nimmo is so selective. You almost want him to be more aggressive and Rosario to get a little bit of that selective batter's eye that Nimmo has. Guys, this has been a really interesting conversation. I appreciate your points of view on both the Major League Baseball Arizona decision and Amed Rosario, both in the same short show. Todd Zeile, Anthony Recker, thanks so much. Guys, we'll see you tomorrow.